The moment I hear the baby crying from the next room, I feel a strange knot in my stomach. There's something off, not with the baby, but with this whole situation. Alyssa, my wife, insists that the baby is mine, but the timing doesn't add up. And lately, I've been noticing things, small, seemingly insignificant details that, when pieced together, paint a picture I can no longer ignore. She has been distant for months, ever since she started working late hours at the firm. At first, I chalked it up to the pressures of her new promotion. But then came the whispered phone calls late at night, the sudden urge to take up weekend conferences, and the way she'd glance nervously at her phone, silencing it every time I walked into the room. Now, every cry from the nursery feels like a question directed at me. What are you going to do about this? I decide tonight is the night. I can't live with the gnawing doubt anymore. While Alyssa is in the shower, I unlock her phone. A breach of trust? Yes, but what choice do I have? Her password hasn't changed, and my hands tremble as I navigate to her messages. That's when I see it, a thread with someone named Chris. My blood runs cold. The texts are explicit, raw, and recent. They go back months. My heart pounds as I scroll further down, past messages that talk about their secret rendezvous, the risks they're taking, and, finally, a single message that makes my breath catch in my throat. Don't worry, babe. If he finds out, we'll figure it out together. She looks more like you every day. A wave of nausea hits me. They're talking about my daughter. Alyssa steps out of the shower, her face glowing and relaxed. She's humming a tune like nothing in the world could be wrong. But I know better. I know that the life I thought I had is nothing but a carefully constructed lie. Tonight, I need answers. But I'm not sure I'll be able to handle what I uncover. Dinner is a quiet affair. Too quiet. Alyssa chatters about her day at work, the baby's milestones, and a potential vacation she wants us to take. But I can't focus on her words. The phone is burning a hole in my pocket, the messages replaying in my mind like a broken record. I try to act normal, nodding at the right moments, but every fiber of my being is ready to snap. After we put the baby to bed, I pour 2 glasses of wine and call her over to the couch. She smiles as she takes the glass, but there's a flicker of something in her eyes, concern, suspicion. She knows something's off. Good. We need to talk, I say, my voice steady, but my hands gripping the glass tightly. What about? She asks, her tone light, but her eyes scanning my face for clues. I take a deep breath. About us. About the baby. About Chris. Her face freezes mid-sip. She lowers the glass slowly, setting it on the coffee table with deliberate care. For a moment, I think she's going to deny everything. But then, she does something that catches me completely off guard. She laughs. It's a soft, almost pitying sound, as though I'm a child who just asked if Santa Claus is real. Oh, Alex, she says, shaking her head. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, Melissa. I snap, the anger I've been holding back finally boiling over. I saw the messages. All of them. The ones where you and Chris talk about your little secret. About how my voice breaks for a moment, but I push through, how she looks more like him every day. Her expression shifts instantly. The laughter vanishes, replaced by a cold, calculating look I've never seen before. She leans back, crossing her arms, and stares at me. And what exactly are you accusing me of? I stand, pacing the room as my emotions swirl. You know damn well what I'm accusing you of. I've suspected for months, but this confirms it. You've been lying to me, Alyssa. Not just about the affair, but about her. Is she even mine? Her jaw tightens, and for the first time, I see fear flicker in her eyes. Alex, you're being ridiculous. Of course she's yours. I don't know what messages you think you saw, but don't lie to me. I roar, slamming my glass onto the table. The wine spills, pooling around the stem. You've been sleeping with him, haven't you? And now, you're trying to pass off his child as mine. She stands now, her face pale, but her voice rising to meet mine. You don't know what you're talking about. You've always been so paranoid, so controlling. Maybe if you trusted me more, I wouldn't have. She stops, realizing too late what she just said. The room goes silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. I take a step closer, my voice low and deadly. Wouldn't have what, Alyssa? Her eyes dart toward the baby monitor, as if she's praying for an interruption, an escape. But none comes. You don't understand, she says finally, her voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I stare at her, the woman I thought I knew, and feel a chasm open between us. Then tell me, I say, my voice cold. Make me understand. Because if you don't, I swear, I'll find out the truth myself. Her eyes well with tears, but I can't tell if they're from guilt, fear, or anger. Fine, she says, her voice trembling. You want the truth? You can't handle the truth. Alyssa sits back down, her hands trembling as she fidgets with the edge of her shirt. For a moment, I think she might start crying, but she takes a deep breath and steels herself. You're right, she says, her voice barely audible. I've been seeing Chris. It started months ago, but it didn't mean anything, Alex. I feel a cold fury rise inside me. Didn't mean anything? You were sneaking around behind my back, and you want to tell me it didn't mean anything? And the baby, Alyssa? Is she mine or not? Alyssa's eyes dart toward the baby monitor again. She hesitates, and that moment of silence is all the confirmation I need. My stomach twists as the weight of her betrayal sinks in. Answer me. I bark, my voice cracking. She flinches, then finally whispers, I don't know. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My knees feel weak, and I sink into the chair across from her, my head spinning. You don't know? I repeat, as if saying it out loud will make it less real. Alyssa looks down, unable to meet my eyes. Chris and I, it was a mistake. It only happened a few times, but it was around the same time I found out I was pregnant. I didn't think it mattered. I didn't think you'd ever question it. Didn't think it mattered? I snap, my voice rising again. You've been lying to me this entire time, pretending that everything was fine while carrying on with him behind my back. And now, you're telling me my daughter, our daughter, might not even be mine? Tears stream down her face now, but I feel no sympathy. I was scared, she says, her voice breaking. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought if I just pretended it wasn't an issue, it would go away. Go away? I echo, shaking my head in disbelief. How do you expect me to just ignore this, Alyssa? How do you expect me to look at her and not wonder every single day? She stands, pacing the room, her hands running through her hair in frustration. I don't know, Alex. I don't know what you want me to say. I made a mistake, okay? A huge, terrible mistake. But I love you, and I love her. Can't we just move past this? Her words hit me like a slap. Move past this? I say, standing to face her. Do you even hear yourself? How can I trust you again? How can I trust that anything you say isn't just another lie? Her silence is deafening. The woman I once thought I'd spend my life with now feels like a stranger. I look toward the baby monitor, hearing the soft coos of a child who might not even be mine, and a thought begins to take shape in my mind. I want a paternity test, I say, my voice cold and firm. Alyssa's head snaps up, her eyes wide with panic. No, she says quickly, shaking her head. Alex, please. You don't need to do that. She's yours. I know she is. Like hell I don't need to, I reply, my voice growing sharper. You just admitted you don't know for sure. Well, I'm going to find out. I deserve to know the truth, Alyssa. And so does she. Her tears flow freely now, but I've had enough. I grab my jacket and head for the door. Where are you going? She cries, running after me. To figure out how to clean up the mess you made, I say without looking back. I slam the door behind me, the sound echoing through the quiet night. Outside, the cool air hits me like a slap, but it doesn't calm the storm raging inside me. My mind is racing, torn between heartbreak and fury. I pull out my phone and start searching for a paternity test center. If she won't give me answers, I'll find them myself. The next morning, I wake up on my brother's couch. Sleep had barely come, and when it did, it was haunted by fragmented images of Alyssa, Chris, and my daughter. Our daughter? I can't even say the words without bitterness. My phone buzzes incessantly. Texts and missed calls from Alyssa flood the screen, each one more desperate than the last. Please, Alex, come home. We can talk about this. Don't do anything drastic. I'm begging you. Think about her. Don't hurt us like this. I ignore them all. The only thing I can think about is getting the truth. After a quick shower, I grab my keys and head straight to the clinic I found last night. The receptionist looks up as I approach, offering a polite but curious smile. I imagine I'm not the first man to walk in here with the weight of his entire life in question. How can we help you today? She asks. I need a paternity test, I say, my voice rough from lack of sleep. She nods, handing me a clipboard with forms to fill out. Do you have the child sample with you? Not yet, I admit. I'll need instructions on how to collect it. Her smile falters slightly, but she quickly recovers. Of course. Once you provide the samples, results usually take about a week. A week. 7 days of waiting, wondering, questioning everything. It feels like an eternity, but I nod, determined to see this through. I leave with a testing kit and a growing sense of resolve. By the time I get back home, Alyssa is waiting for me. She looks like she hasn't slept either. Her eyes are red, her hair unkempt, and she's clutching a cup of coffee like it's the only thing keeping her upright. You came back, she says softly, standing as I walk through the door. I'm not here to talk, I reply coldly, brushing past her. I need a sample from the baby. Alex, please, she says, following me into the nursery. You don't need to do this. She's your daughter. I know it in my heart. I whirl around, my frustration bubbling over. Your heart doesn't mean a damn thing to me right now, Alyssa. This is about facts. Cold, hard facts. She flinches at my tone, but doesn't argue further. I gather what I need. A swab from the baby's mouth, carefully sealed in the provided container. She watches in silence, her hands trembling as she holds the crib railing. Once the sample is secured, I turn to leave, but her voice stops me. What happens if she's not yours? She asks, her voice barely above a whisper. The question hits me like a gut punch. I don't have an answer. How could I? How do you plan for the possibility that the life you've built is based on a lie? I don't know, I admit, my voice softer now, but I'll figure it out. As I drive back to the clinic to drop off the samples, my mind races with what-ifs. What if she's not mine? What if she is? Will I be able to look at her the same way? Can I ever forgive Alyssa for what she's done? The thought of Chris makes my blood boil. I imagine confronting him, demanding answers, making him feel even a fraction of the pain he's caused. But I know it won't change anything. The damage is already done. At the clinic, I hand over the samples and sign the necessary paperwork. We'll contact you as soon as the results are ready, the receptionist assures me. Her words offer no comfort. As I walk out, the weight of the situation bears down on me. 7 days. 7 days to decide how to rebuild my life, or walk away from it entirely. The week crawls by, each day longer than the last. Alyssa tries calling, texting, even showing up at my brother's place once. I don't answer the door. I don't want to see her, let alone talk to her. The anger is still too raw, the betrayal too fresh. Every time my phone buzzes, I jump, hoping it's the clinic with the results. But it's always something else, a notification, a spam call, or another desperate message from Alyssa. On the third night, I sit in my brother's kitchen nursing a glass of whiskey. You gonna be okay, man? He asks, leaning against the counter. I don't know, I admit, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. I keep going over it in my head, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. When did she stop loving me? Or did she ever love me at all? He sighs, pulling out a chair and sitting across from me. Sometimes, people make stupid choices, Alex. It doesn't mean they didn't love you at some point, but it doesn't excuse what she did. I nod, but his words feel hollow. How can love coexist with betrayal? The two seem fundamentally incompatible. By the 6th day, I'm a wreck. I've barely eaten, I've hardly slept, and my temper is on a hair trigger. When the phone finally rings with a number I recognize as the clinic's, my heart nearly stops. Mr. Cooper? The receptionist's voice is calm, professional. We have your results ready. Would you like to come in to discuss them, or should I send them via email? Email, I say quickly. I don't think I can handle the small talk and pleasantries required for an in-person meeting. Understood. You'll have them shortly. I hang up and stare at my phone, waiting for the notification to appear. When it finally does, I hesitate. My finger hovers over the email, my chest tightening. Whatever is in that message will change my life forever. Taking a deep breath, I open it. My eyes scan the document, skipping over the legal jargon until I find the section that matters most. My hands start to shake as I read the words. Paternity test results. 0% probability of paternity. I reread it, hoping I've misunderstood, but the meaning doesn't change. She's not mine. The little girl I've been raising, loving, protecting. She's not my daughter. A strange numbness washes over me. I don't feel anger or sadness, just an overwhelming emptiness. It's as if the ground beneath me has disappeared, leaving me suspended in a void. I forward the results to Alyssa without a word, then toss my phone onto the couch. I can't deal with her reaction right now. I can't deal with anything. When my brother gets home that evening, he finds me sitting on the back porch, staring into the darkness. He doesn't say anything, just sits down beside me. We stay like that for hours, the silence broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or chirp of a cricket. Eventually, he asks, "What are you gonna do?" "I don't know," I reply, my voice hollow. "But I can't go back. Not after this." The next morning, my phone buzzes incessantly. I already know it's Alyssa, but I don't have the strength to read her messages. Eventually, curiosity, or maybe masochism, gets the better of me. Her texts are a chaotic mix of pleas and justifications. "Alex, please, let's talk. Don't make any decisions without hearing me out. She's just a baby, Alex. She needs a father. You're the only one who's been there for her. You're being unfair. I made a mistake, but it doesn't change the fact that you're her dad in every way that matters." Each message ignites a new wave of anger. Her audacity is astounding. She lied, betrayed me, and expected me to shoulder the burden of her actions as though nothing had happened. By the time I reach her last message, my resolve hardens. It simply reads, "I'm coming over. We need to talk." I reply for the first time in days, "Don't." There's nothing left to say. But true to form, Alyssa doesn't listen. Less than an hour later, I hear the sound of her car in the driveway. My brother, seeing the storm brewing, retreats to his room, leaving me to face her alone. When I open the door, she's standing there, looking more disheveled than I've ever seen her. No makeup, hair tied back, her eyes red from crying. For a moment, I feel a flicker of pity, but it's quickly replaced by the cold realization of why she's here. "Alex," she begins, her voice cracking. "Please, can we talk?" I step aside, letting her in, but keep my arms crossed. "Say what you need to say, and then leave." She takes a deep breath, visibly trembling. "I know I hurt you. I know I betrayed your trust in the worst way possible. But I was scared, Alex. I didn't know how to handle everything, and I made a horrible mistake." I scoff, leaning against the doorframe. "Mistake? Is that what you're calling it?" "You didn't make a mistake, Alyssa. You made a choice." Repeatedly. Her face crumples, but she presses on. "I know, and I'll never forgive myself for what I've done. But please, Alex, think about her. She loves you. You're the only father she's ever known. Don't," I snap, cutting her off. "Don't try to guilt me into staying. I love her, but she's not mine. And you knew there was a chance she wasn't, but you let me believe otherwise." Tears stream down her face, and for a moment, she's silent. Then she says something I don't expect. "You're right. I should have told you. But Alex, you're the better man. Chris doesn't want anything to do with her. If you leave, she'll have no one." Her words hit me like a gut punch. She's not just pleading for herself. She's pleading for the baby. And that's what makes this so much harder. I do love her. She's been my daughter for the past year, and the thought of walking away feels like tearing out a part of myself. But I can't ignore the truth. "I need time," I say finally, my voice low. "Time to think about what's best for her, and for me." Alyssa nods, though it's clear she wants to argue. "Okay," she whispers. "Take all the time you need. Just don't shut us out completely." As she leaves, the house feels colder, emptier. I sit on the couch, staring at the baby monitor, watching the tiny movements of a child who no longer feels like mine. The house is unbearably silent after Alyssa leaves. Every creak and groan feels amplified, a reminder of the emptiness that now occupies the space where my family used to be. My brother steps out of his room cautiously, sensing the tension still lingering in the air. "She gone?" he asks, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. "For now," I reply, my voice flat. "But she wants me to stay involved. For the baby." He nods slowly, considering his words. "And what do you want?" The question hangs in the air, heavier than anything I've felt in my life. What do I want? If you'd asked me a week ago, I would have said I wanted to keep my family together, to build a life for my daughter. But now, that dream feels like a cruel joke. I don't know, I admit. I feel like I should stay for her, but at the same time, I can't forget what Alyssa did. I can't just pretend like nothing happened. "Maybe you don't have to," he says, leaning forward. "Maybe there's a way to be there for the baby without staying tied to Alyssa." His words spark an idea. It's risky and unorthodox, but it might be the only way forward. I don't want to abandon the baby, but I also can't live under the same roof as the woman who betrayed me. The next day, I contact a family lawyer. Explaining the situation is humiliating, but necessary. The lawyer listens intently, asking questions about my relationship with Alyssa and my involvement in the baby's life. "Legally, you have no obligation," he explains once I finish. "But that doesn't mean you can't pursue some kind of arrangement if you want to remain in her life." "What kind of arrangement?" I ask, leaning forward in my chair. "You could petition for visitation rights, even if you're not the biological father," he says. "It would require Alyssa's agreement, of course, but it's possible. However, if you want full custody or a co-parenting situation, that would be more complicated. The idea of fighting for custody feels overwhelming, but visitation? That feels achievable. It would allow me to be there for the baby without being tethered to Alyssa." When I share the idea with my brother later that night, he nods approvingly. "It's not a bad plan," he says. "It gives you time to figure things out without cutting her out of your life completely." "Yeah," I say, feeling the faintest glimmer of hope for the first time in days. "It's worth a shot." The next morning, I call Alyssa. Her voice is hesitant when she answers, a mix of relief and trepidation. "Alex, we need to talk," I say. "Not about us, but about her. I have a proposition." "What kind of proposition?" she asks, her tone guarded. "I want visitation rights," I explain. "I don't want to live with you, Alyssa. Not after everything. But I also don't want to abandon her. This way, I can still be part of her life without pretending everything's okay between us." There's a long pause on the other end of the line. When she finally speaks, her voice is thick with emotion. "You do that? Even after everything?" "It's not about you," I say firmly. "It's about her." We agree to meet with the lawyer later in the week to iron out the details. As I hang up, I feel a strange mix of relief and apprehension. This plan isn't perfect, but it's a start. It's a way to take control of a situation that has felt so hopelessly out of my grasp. For the first time in a week, I feel like I can breathe. Alyssa and I meet at the lawyer's office a few days later. The atmosphere is tense, a mix of awkward silences and forced civility. She looks fragile, her hands twisting in her lap as the lawyer explains the process for formalizing a visitation agreement. "We'll draft a document that outlines the visitation schedule," the lawyer says, adjusting his glasses. "It will also include provisions for decision-making rights if either party has concerns about the child's welfare. Since you're not the biological father, Alex, this arrangement will require Alyssa's consent." I glance at her, searching for a reaction. She nods, her face pale but determined. "I'll agree to whatever it takes to keep him in her life." The lawyer raises an eyebrow. "That's good to hear. Mutual cooperation will make this process much smoother." As we go over the details, I feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I'm committing to staying in the baby's life, even though every time I look at her, I'll be reminded of Alyssa's betrayal. But the thought of walking away completely feels even worse. After 2 hours of discussions and paperwork, the lawyer gives us a tentative schedule. I'll have visitation rights twice a week, with one overnight stay every other weekend. It's a starting point, a way to maintain some semblance of a relationship with the baby without getting too entangled in Alyssa's life. When we leave the office, Alyssa stops me in the parking lot. "Thank you, Alex," she says, her voice trembling. "You don't know how much this means to me. To us." I nod, keeping my distance. "This isn't for you, Alyssa. It's for her." She flinches but doesn't argue. I watch as she gets into her car and drives away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The arrangement is fair, but it doesn't feel like a victory. It feels like a compromise in a battle I never wanted to fight. Later that evening, I sit with my brother, going over the agreement. "You think this will work?" he asks, his expression skeptical. "I don't know," I admit, "but it's the best I can do right now. At least this way, I can still be there for her without pretending everything's okay." He nods, but I can tell he has reservations. "Just be careful, Alex. Don't let Alyssa manipulate you. She's already shown what she's capable of." His words linger in my mind as I prepare for my first scheduled visit. When I arrive at Alyssa's house, the baby is waiting for me in her high chair, babbling happily. For a moment, all the anger and resentment melt away, replaced by a fierce protectiveness I can't ignore. "Hi, sweetie," I say, lifting her into my arms. Her tiny hands grab at my shirt, her wide eyes lighting up with recognition. In that moment, I realize that no matter what happens with Alyssa, I can't walk away from this little girl. She may not be mine by blood, but she's mine in every way that matters. Alyssa watches from the doorway, her expression unreadable. "You'll be back by 6? She asks, her voice hesitant. "Yeah," I reply, not looking at her. My focus is on the baby, on making the most of the time I have with her. As I buckle her into the car seat and drive away, I feel a strange sense of purpose. This isn't the life I envisioned, but it's the life I have now. And for her sake, I'll make it work. Over the next few weeks, a routine begins to form. Twice a week, I pick up the baby, Grace, as I've always called her, and spend the day with her. The first few visits are awkward, with Alyssa hovering nervously, watching us from the doorway. But as the weeks go by, she begins to trust me again, at least enough to let me take Grace without constant supervision. It's not easy. Every time I step into that house, memories of our life together assault me. The pictures on the wall, the furniture we picked out together, the nursery we decorated with so much excitement. It all feels like a cruel reminder of what I've lost. But I push those thoughts aside for Grace's sake. Our time together is simple but meaningful. I take her to the park, push her on the swings, and watch her face light up with pure joy. We visit the zoo, where her wide-eyed wonder at the animals makes me forget, even for a moment, the pain I'm carrying. At night, when she stays over, I read to her before bed, marveling at how quickly she falls asleep in my arms. It's moments like these that make everything else feel worth it. But the cracks are still there, lurking beneath the surface. One evening, as I'm dropping Grace off, Alyssa corners me in the hallway. "Alex," she begins hesitantly, "I just wanted to say thank you for giving this a chance." I stiffen, unsure how to respond. "I'm not doing this for you, Alyssa." "I know," she says quickly, her eyes downcast, "but it means a lot. More than you know." I nod curtly and turn to leave, but her next words stop me in my tracks. "I miss you." The weight of her confession hangs in the air, but I can't bring myself to turn around. "You should have thought about that before," I say, my voice cold. "You made your choice." She doesn't argue, and I leave without looking back. As I drive away, Grace asleep in the back seat. My mind churns with conflicting emotions. Part of me wants to forgive Alyssa, to find a way back to the life we once had. But the other part, the louder part, knows that forgiveness won't change what she's done, or the damage it's caused. The next day, I meet my brother for coffee. He listens quietly as I vent, his face unreadable. When I finish, he leans forward, his expression serious. "You've got to be careful, Alex," he says. "She's trying to worm her way back in. Don't let her manipulate you." "She says she misses me," I admit, my voice low. "But how can I ever trust her again?" "You can't," he says bluntly. "Not after this." Focus on Grace. She's the one who matters now. His words echo in my mind as I return home. He's right. Grace is the one who matters. But the question remains. How do I navigate a life so deeply entwined with Alyssa's without losing myself in the process? The days roll on, and I pour all my energy into building a bond with Grace. Each visit strengthens my resolve to be in her life, regardless of the circumstances. But Alyssa's attempts to inch closer don't go unnoticed. She sends texts beyond the visitation schedule, asking how I'm doing, if we can talk, or even if I want to grab dinner, for Grace's sake. I ignore them all. She doesn't get to rewrite history with a few polite messages. One day, while playing with Grace at the park, a man approaches us. He's tall, with a confident stride and a smirk that sets my teeth on edge. It's Chris. I know it without him saying a word. "You must be Alex," he says, extending a hand I have no intention of shaking. "I'm Chris." I stand, positioning myself between him and Grace. "What do you want?" His smirk falters slightly, but he presses on. "Look, I thought it was time we met. I've heard a lot about you." "Can't say the same," I reply coldly. "But then, I didn't sneak into your life and destroy it." He flinches, but only slightly. "Fair enough," he says. "I just wanted to see Grace, to meet her." I feel a surge of protectiveness, my hands clenching into fists. "You don't get to play dad now. You walked away. You left Alyssa to lie and manipulate. If you wanted to be in her life, you should have stepped up from the beginning." He sighs, running a hand through his hair. "I know I messed up, but I've been thinking, maybe it's time I take responsibility." "Responsibility?" I laugh bitterly. "You're months late and dollars short, Chris. She doesn't need you. She has me." "She's not your daughter," he says softly, but the words hit like a sledgehammer. I take a step closer, lowering my voice to a growl. "She's more mine than she'll ever be yours. You don't get to waltz in here and take credit for a child you didn't care enough to claim." Chris holds up his hands, backing off slightly. "Look, I'm not trying to start a fight. I just want a chance." "No," I say firmly. "You had your chance, and you blew it. Stay away from her." I grab Grace and walk away, my heart pounding. I glance back once to see Chris watching us, his expression unreadable. When I drop Grace off at Alyssa's that evening, I tell her about the encounter. Her face pales, her hands shaking as she grips the edge of the counter. "He found you," she whispers, her voice trembling. "Yeah," I reply, crossing my arms. "Care to explain how he knew where I'd be?" "I didn't tell him," she insists quickly. "I swear, Alex. He's been calling me non-stop, but I haven't answered. I didn't think he'd actually show up." Her panic seems genuine, but I'm too angry to care. "Keep him away from her," I snap. "If I see him near her again, I'll make sure he regrets it." She nods, tears brimming in her eyes. "I'll handle it," she says softly. "I won't let him near her." As I leave, a new sense of determination takes hold. I won't let Chris or Alyssa mess with Grace's life any further. If they think they can disrupt the fragile stability I've built, they've got another thing coming. The following week passes without incident, but the encounter with Chris lingers in my mind. Every time I take Grace to the park, I find myself scanning the crowd, on edge, waiting for him to show up again. My trust in Alyssa to handle it is non-existent. She's already proven how adept she is at keeping secrets, and I can't risk her letting Chris back into Grace's life. During one of Grace's overnight stays, my brother catches me staring blankly at the TV, my mind clearly elsewhere. "You can't let this guy mess with you," he says, sitting down beside me. "If you're serious about protecting Grace, you might need to take legal action." "I've thought about it," I admit. "But what's my standing? I'm not her biological father. If Chris pushes hard enough, he could claim his rights and I'd be pushed out." "Not if you're proactive," he counters. "You've been her dad in every way that counts. A judge might recognize that. And as for Chris, if he's just now showing interest, that'll work against him." His words make sense, but the idea of dragging Grace through a legal battle feels like opening Pandora's box. Still, I can't shake the feeling that I need to act before Chris makes his next move. The opportunity presents itself sooner than I expect. On the next visitation day, Alyssa texts me an update. Chris has been calling me again. He's threatening to file for custody. I stare at the message, my blood boiling. That's it. I'm done playing defense. I contact the lawyer that afternoon and schedule a meeting. When I walk into the lawyer's office 2 days later, I feel a strange mix of apprehension and determination. He listens carefully as I explain the situation. Chris's sudden interest in Grace, Alyssa's inability to control the chaos, and my role in Grace's life so far. You've been consistent in her life since birth? The lawyer asks, jotting down notes. Yes, I reply. I've been the one taking care of her, providing for her, being her father. He nods thoughtfully. That's a strong foundation. The courts tend to favor stability, especially for young children. If you want to pursue legal guardianship or even custody, you have a case. But it won't be easy, especially if the biological father fights back. I don't care if it's easy, I say firmly. I care about what's right for her. The lawyer gives me a measured look. Then we'll proceed. I'll file the paperwork and request a hearing. Be prepared. This process could get ugly. Later that evening, I tell Alyssa about the plan. She's visibly torn, her hands fidgeting with her sleeves as I speak. I don't want Chris anywhere near her, I explain. But I also can't rely on you to keep him away. This is the only way to protect her. She nods slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. I'll support you, she says. If it means keeping her safe, I'll do whatever it takes. Her words sound genuine, but I know better than to let my guard down. She's been cooperative so far, but the moment her interests conflict with mine, I can't trust her to choose the right side. As I leave her house that night, I feel the weight of what's ahead pressing down on me. The battle for Grace is just beginning, and I have no intention of losing. The legal process kicks off with a flurry of paperwork, phone calls, and meetings with the lawyer. Each document I sign, each statement I provide, feels like a step deeper into the battlefield. But I can't afford to hesitate, not when Grace's future is at stake. Alyssa stays cooperative, at least on the surface. She attends meetings with the lawyer and assures me she'll testify on my behalf if necessary. Yet, every time we're in the same room, I can't help but question her motives. Is she genuinely committed to keeping Chris out of Grace's life? Or is she just trying to salvage whatever scraps of trust remain between us? A court date is set for the initial hearing. The night before, I sit in my apartment, staring at a picture of Grace. It's a simple photo, her sitting on a swing, her face lit up with laughter, but it feels like a lifeline. I tell myself that no matter what happens tomorrow, I'm doing this for her. The next morning, I arrive at the courthouse early, my lawyer by my side. The air is thick with tension as we wait in the hallway. When Alyssa arrives, she looks pale and nervous, clutching a folder of documents. Chris shows up moments later, his usual smug expression firmly in place. Seeing him stroll in as if he owns the place makes my blood boil. The hearing begins, and the judge listens intently as both sides present their cases. My lawyer emphasizes my role as Grace's primary caregiver and the stability I've provided since her birth. Chris's lawyer counters, arguing that as the biological father, Chris has a right to be involved in her life. When Alyssa takes the stand, her testimony is both a relief and a source of frustration. She admits to her affair with Chris, but paints a picture of me as a devoted father who has always put Grace first. Yet, when pressed about Chris's involvement, she hesitates. He's never shown much interest in being a father, she says finally. But he deserves a chance, doesn't he? The words feel like a betrayal, and I shoot her a sharp look. She avoids my gaze, staring at the floor as the judge takes notes. When it's my turn to testify, I speak from the heart. I talk about the nights spent rocking Grace to sleep, the joy of watching her take her first steps, and the fierce love I feel for her. She may not be mine by blood, I say, my voice steady, but she's mine in every way that matters. The judge nods thoughtfully, but his expression is unreadable. The hearing ends with a promise of a decision in the coming weeks. As we leave the courtroom, Chris approaches me. You can't keep her from me forever, he says, his voice low and threatening. I'm her father. She'll know that someday. I step closer, my voice a growl. You're nothing to her, and I'll make damn sure it stays that way. Chris smirks but backs off, walking away with his lawyer. Alyssa lingers behind, looking torn. I didn't mean to undermine you, she says quietly. I just thought it was the right thing to say. Then you don't understand what's at stake, I reply coldly. You're still giving him the benefit of the doubt, and that's a mistake you'll regret. I leave without another word, my mind racing with plans for the next steps. This fight is far from over, but I'm more determined than ever to see it through. The weeks leading up to the judge's decision are some of the longest of my life. Every moment is filled with tension, anticipation, and the weight of uncertainty. Grace remains the one bright spot in all of it. Each visit with her feels more precious than the last, a reminder of why I'm fighting so hard. Alyssa continues to play the role of the cooperative co-parent, but her hesitations during the hearing have left a sour taste in my mouth. I keep my interactions with her strictly focused on Grace, avoiding any personal conversations. She tries, occasionally, to bring up our past, but I shut it down every time. You can't undo this, Alyssa, I tell her one evening after dropping Grace off. There's no going back. I know, she replies softly, looking down, but I wish there was. I leave without responding, my focus firmly on the battle ahead. On the day the judge's decision is announced, I arrive at the courthouse early, my lawyer by my side. The courtroom is filled with a tense silence as we wait for the judge to enter. Alyssa sits across the aisle, her expression unreadable. Chris, as always, wears his smug confidence like armor. The judge begins by summarizing the case, his tone measured and impartial. He acknowledges the complexity of the situation, the biological connection between Chris and Grace, my role as her primary caregiver, and Alyssa's testimony about our shared history. Finally, he delivers his decision. Given the circumstances, the court finds it in the best interest of the child to maintain stability and continuity in her life. Custody will remain with the mother, Alyssa Cooper. However, visitation rights are awarded to Alex Cooper, recognizing his significant role in the child's upbringing. The relief washes over me like a wave. It's not full custody, but it's a victory nonetheless. Chris's lawyer protests, arguing that his client deserves more, but the judge cuts him off. Mr. Williams, the judge says firmly, addressing Chris, your sudden interest in the child does not outweigh the stability she has known with Mr. Cooper. While you may pursue a future relationship through appropriate channels, this court will not disrupt her current support system. Chris's face hardens, his jaw tightening as the judge finishes. Alyssa glances at me, her expression a mix of relief and guilt. Outside the courtroom, Chris confronts me again, his anger barely contained. This isn't over, he growls. You'll see. Do what you want, I reply coldly. But you'll never be her father. He storms off, leaving Alyssa and me alone. She hesitates, then says, Thank you, Alex. For everything. I nod but say nothing. The wound is still too fresh, the betrayal too deep. My focus is on Grace, and Grace alone. That evening, as I sit with her during one of our visits, I feel a sense of peace for the first time in weeks. She plays with her favorite stuffed animal, giggling as she makes it dance across the floor. Watching her, I know that no matter what challenges lie ahead, I'll face them head-on. For her, I'll do whatever it takes. The weeks following the judge's decision are a blur of adjustment and cautious optimism. My time with Grace feels more meaningful now, knowing that I fought for every moment. Each visit reaffirms my commitment to her, even as the weight of the past lingers. Alyssa, to her credit, sticks to the agreement without issue. She keeps her interactions with Chris minimal, and as far as I know, he hasn't tried to push for more involvement since the ruling. But I can feel his presence like a shadow looming over everything, a reminder that this battle might not be over. One evening, during an overnight stay, Grace toddles over to me with a book in hand. Read, Daddy, she says, her voice bright and full of trust. Daddy. The word hits me like a bolt of lightning, and for a moment, I can't speak. It's the first time she's called me that since the truth came out. I scoop her into my arms, holding her tightly as tears prick my eyes. Of course, sweetheart, I whisper. Anything you want. We sit on the couch, and I read to her until she falls asleep in my arms. In that moment, I realize that this is what matters. Not the court battles, not the lies, not even Chris. Grace is what matters, and she's worth every ounce of effort. But even as I focus on Grace, I can't ignore the unfinished business with Alyssa. One afternoon, after dropping Grace off, I ask her if we can talk. Her eyes widen slightly, but she nods, inviting me in. We sit at the kitchen table, the same table where we once planned our future together. It feels strange, almost surreal, to be here now, with so much between us. I need to know something. I begin, my voice steady but firm. Why did you do it? Why, Chris? She looks down, her hands twisting nervously. I don't have a good answer, she admits. I was lonely. You were so focused on work, and I felt like I didn't matter anymore. Chris gave me attention, and I made a terrible mistake. Her words cut deep, but they also bring a strange sense of closure. It doesn't excuse what she did, but it helps me understand. You could have talked to me, I say quietly. You could have told me how you felt. I know, she says, tears brimming in her eyes. And I'll regret not doing that for the rest of my life. We sit in silence for a moment, the weight of everything we've been through hanging in the air. Finally, I stand, ready to leave. I'll always be there for Grace, I say. But you and I, there's no fixing this. She nods, her expression filled with sorrow. I understand. Thank you for not giving up on her. As I walk out the door, I feel a sense of finality. The chapter with Alyssa is closed, but my journey with Grace is just beginning. Life begins to settle into a new rhythm. Grace and I have our days together filled with laughter, trips to the park, and bedtime stories. Her joy becomes my anchor, pulling me through the lingering waves of anger and pain. But as much as I try to focus on the present, the past keeps creeping back. Chris makes one last attempt to disrupt our fragile peace. I receive a letter from his lawyer, a formal request for a review of his custody rights. My lawyer assures me it's a long shot, but it's enough to reignite the anger I've been trying to suppress. I decide it's time to confront Chris directly. I can't let him keep hanging over us like a dark cloud. With my lawyer's approval, I arrange a meeting in a neutral setting, a cafe near the courthouse. Chris arrives looking smug, as if he's already won. I figured we'd cross paths again, he says, sliding into the seat across from me. Let's cut the crap, I reply, leaning forward. You're not doing this for Grace. This is about your ego, isn't it? About proving you have some claim on her. He shrugs, his smirk never faltering. She's my daughter. I have a right to be in her life. You had a right, I shoot back, my voice sharp, and you threw it away. Grace doesn't need you, Chris. She doesn't even know you. All she knows is me. His expression darkens, and for a moment, I see the anger simmering beneath his facade. You think you're better than me? Playing house with someone else's kid? I don't think I'm better, I say, my voice steady. I know I am, because I'm the one who's been there for her every day. I'm the one who's fought for her, who loves her. You? You're just a name on a birth certificate. The words hit their mark. Chris glares at me, his composure cracking. You think this is over, he growls. You can't keep her from me forever. You're right, I reply, standing up. This isn't over. It never will be, because I'll always be the one standing between you and her. So, go ahead. Waste your time and money, but you'll never be her father. I leave the cafe without waiting for a response. As I step outside, the weight of the confrontation lifts, replaced by a renewed sense of determination. Chris may have the biological connection, but I have something stronger, a bond built on love and trust. That evening, I sit with Grace as she plays with her toys. She looks up at me, her big eyes filled with curiosity. Daddy, she says softly. Yes, sweetheart. Do you love me? She asks, her voice innocent and sweet. I scoop her into my arms, holding her close. More than anything in the world, I whisper. Never forget that. She giggles, nestling against my chest, and I feel a sense of peace I haven't known in months. No matter what Chris or Alyssa does, this is what matters. Grace is what matters. Months pass, and the chaos that once consumed my life begins to fade into the background. Chris's custody review is denied, and while I know he might try again, his absence speaks volumes about his commitment, or lack thereof. For now, Grace's life is stable, and that's all I care about. Alyssa and I find a rhythm as co-parents. We remain cordial, but distant, keeping our interactions focused solely on Grace. She seems to have accepted that there's no going back for us, and for that, I'm grateful. Her attempts to rebuild her life are hers to make, but I've moved on. One Saturday morning, as Grace and I play in the backyard, my brother stops by. He watches us for a moment before saying, "You look happy." "I am," I reply, tossing a ball to Grace, who giggles as she tries to catch it. "It's not the life I planned, but it's good. Better than I expected." He nods, smiling. "You've done right by her, Alex. That's all that matters." Later that evening, as Grace sleeps, I reflect on how far we've come. The pain of betrayal still lingers, but it no longer controls me. I found something stronger: purpose, resilience, and the unbreakable bond one share with Grace. Life isn't perfect, but it's mine. And as I watch my daughter's peaceful face, I know one thing for certain. I'll keep fighting for her, no matter what. Because in the end, love isn't about biology or perfection. It's about showing up, staying strong, and never giving up. As the weeks turn into months and the months into years, Grace grows into a vibrant, happy child. She starts calling me her hero, and every time she does, it reminds me of why I made the choices I did. The scars of the past may remain, but they no longer define me. This is my life now, a life built on second chances, resilience, and the kind of love that nothing, not betrayal, not lies, not even biology, can break. And as I tuck Grace into bed that night, her tiny hand clutching mine, I know I'd do it all over again for her. Thank you for following along on this journey. If you've ever fought for what matters most, share your story below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of resilience and redemption.